The 35th Guam Legislature is back from recess. Senator Kelly, you are recognized still on the amendment.
Sainamaasi, Madam Speaker. So if I could be reminded, please, we were looking at the first part of this amendment where it said the public consumption was banned and had a penalty. Did you want me to move on to the second part, or did we need to finish the first part?
We need the motion to be voted on.
Okay.
You're ready for the vote?
Yes.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing Senator Therese, she closed on this amendment already. Do you have a point of information? Senator, a point of information or a question? Please state your...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So notice that we're changing it's unlawful to consume openly and in public to consumption in a public place is unlawful. And so I guess there's a difference now between a private residence and a business, and also I guess I just wanted to make sure that public place, it says it's not a private residence, but there's a rule that I'm trying to see if it's in this section, or there's another section that says you cannot grow cannabis where it can be seen by the public. But I guess, I apologize, Madam Speaker. This is, maybe I'll wait for that section. This is consumption, so we'll have to get to growing and when we get there. Thank you, ma'am.
Sitoa Smasi. On the motion, we had Senator Kelly close on the amendment. On the motion, are there any objections? You object? There is an objection. All those who support the first motion on section 8105, please signify by raising your hand. Can you do that count one more time? Can we raise your hands, please, for those who support it? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Motion carries. Now, Senator Taxino, on the second amendment on the same page.
Okay.
Please read the amendment out, please.
Sejos Maasi, Madam Speaker. This says, beginning on line 1 of page 8, a new section 8102U is hereby added to read. And U, public place, means any open or enclosed area to which the public is invited or in which the public is permitted, including but not limited to. And I would like to retain from this section public transportation facilities, parks, roads, public easements, beaches, recreational areas, public waiting rooms, and just the reiteration, a private residence is not a public place.
Does everybody understand that motion? On the motion? No. Senator Therese, you're recognized on that amendment.
Does she mean to take out from the written amendment the other words that she did not mention?
I will ask her, would you wish to yield to that amendment, Senator Taitsino?
Hungin. Yes, it was pointed out to me that the Natasha Act and other portions of the bill already cover the rights of private entities to control their spaces. So I'm leaving in to make sure that we are including to the bill the public transportation facilities, the parks, the roads, the public easements, the beaches, the recreational areas, and the public waiting rooms.
Does that answer your question, Senator Terlai? Okay. On the amendment,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you also to the sponsor for the clarification. I understand the correlation with the Natasha Act and where we limit smoking. However, what this amendment will do then is say that where the bill used to say that it was unlawful to consume cannabis openly and in public, this now says that you can consume cannabis in any retail store, a theater, banks, healthcare facilities, restaurants, retail food production areas. I'm going to object to that, Madam Speaker. I think that we should restrict the use in those areas, and because these are areas where public is invited, and it's clear that children are also invited. Some of these are healthcare facilities. I mean, I think we can make an exception if it's under, you know, the order of the doctor, but otherwise, I would object to that. And the other reason, this is there's another section that's not included in this amendment that talks about cannabis plants shall be cultivated in a location where the plants are not visible from any public location. But that's, I guess, different from a public place according to this definition. But I guess so I object, Madam Speaker. I like the intent of the original amendment where it was going to define public place to include all these places where many people frequent, and particularly our youth.
thank you, Senator Therese. There was an objection on the floor. Anybody else on the main motion? On the amendment as spoken, and that is the second amendment, which is beginning on page 8, line 1. Senator Therese Terlai has objected to that amendment. Anyone wishing to speak on that? Senator Joseph Augustine, you are recognized. We are on definitions.
Madam Speaker, we're entertaining the amendment by Senator Marsh.
Yes.
Reference to the consumption of cannabis in the public use shall be unlawful, correct? Is that I just want to make sure I'm on the same sheet. I just wanted to actually ask to amend her amendment.
Yeah.
And to strike out, as she has struck out, it is unlawful to consume cannabis openly and in public. Strike out everything all the way to period after Cannabis Control Board.
Senator San Augustine, on this amendment, we did entertain the first amendment there, and that was passed. And now we are on amendment number 2.
Which is?
That says there is a new U, which is added to line 8. Page 8, line 1.
Understood, but all it did on that section was define what a public place is, when it's already stated that you can consume it at a public place. So that's just defining public place.
Yes.
Okay, then my recommendation for an amendment is not in order then. I'll get it next.
Anyone else on Senator Taitano's amendment, part 2? Senator Mary Torres, you are recognized. I apologize, I did not see you on the amendment.
Madam Speaker, with regard to the amendment to Section 8102, which essentially is the section on definitions, I don't see
Yes.
that it is improper to have a definition of what a public place means. I just want to point out that, you know, ironically, we had already pretty much established that the ban of the unlawfulness of consumption of cannabis in a public place is unlawful unless otherwise permitted by regulations duly promulgated and enacted by the Cannabis Control Board. So, you know, whether or not we clearly define what it is, it's truly at the discretion of the Cannabis Control Board to make exceptions, notwithstanding the definition. So I just wanted to point that out for everybody. I wish sometimes the order were reversed because
Yeah.
it's really a very difficult way to amend things when we're hopping from back to front to middle to back to front. It's just,
Thank you, Senator.
it's a Monday, but certainly feels like a Monday, and I hope it gets better real soon.
Thank you, Senator Torres. On the amendment, anyone else wishing to speak? Senator Tachino, would you like to close, or would you like to call for the votes? There was an objection. Senator Terlahi, I will go ahead and recognize you.
I appreciate that, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the rules. I'd like, if I could make an amendment to the amendment to include all the places that are listed on the written amendment. In other words, to restore the definition to the original written amendment that's before us, because the motion now is only to accept a few of these places under the definition.
So there is a amendment to this present amendment. There is an objection. I'm going to call for the votes. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. On the amendment to, on Senator Terlahi's amendment to the amendment. There was an objection. All those in favor signify by 1, 2.
Madam Speaker, could,
We're going to take a minute recess.
Yes,
So you can.
please.
This legislature's back from recess. To my colleagues, I had the amendment has been passed out to make sure that the amendment as detailed is written. Does everybody have a copy, please? Okay. Is there an objection to this amendment? Are there any objections? Yes, I will.
Point of inquiry, Madam Speaker. If you could just please read the amendment so we're all on the same page. Thank you, Madam
I
Speaker.
will have Senator Kelly read the amendment.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. So the amendment is on line 6, page 8, to amend the bill to read, a new section 8102U is hereby added to read, U. Public place means any open or enclosed area to which the public is invited or in which the public is permitted, including but not limited to parks, roads, public easements, beaches, recreational areas, and public waiting rooms. A private residence is not a public place.
On that amendment, are there any objections? Yes, Senator Terlahi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I understand the intent of the author, but again, if we are going to limit public places to only being these places that she listed, and to no longer include healthcare facilities, banks, public transportation facilities, reception areas, restaurants, retail food production areas, business establishments, retail stores, theaters, then I would suggest that we are becoming, or this bill will be more lax than the medicinal cannabis bill was, or that law. That law, if I understand correctly, restricted use to the original language of this bill. It was unlawful to consume openly and in public. And I would suggest that what is good for medicinal cannabis, the restrictions that we were placed on patients even, should remain in place, because these other public places are places where children will be. And I just think it's a good policy to keep it consistent. My understanding is that it's also consistent, the language cannot be consumed openly and in public is also consistent with Colorado. That's how strict they are. They do not allow it to be consumed on public transportation facilities and restaurants and these other places. So I would suggest we're trying to follow patterns of other states, that we stick to those patterns.
Senator Terlahi, if I may, her previous amendment that had passed had noted public
right.
transportation and facilities. So it is, the amendment has, that portion has already been passed. So do you?
So the written one should show. I thought I'm talking on her amendment right now.
Yes.
Sorry, that was my error. That one should.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right then. So to include her list now includes public transportation facilities. All right. Well, still, same thing for the other things that have been excluded here, meaning that we are now going to allow consumption of marijuana in all these other public places, perhaps, that are currently not allowed for medicinal cannabis, and they're currently not allowed in Colorado either. Thank you,
So
Madam.
do you have an objection to that?
Well, so I would ask that we restore the original language, and actually, I'm thinking now that the original language up on 8105 is probably better, to keep consistent with the cannabis law and keep consistent with Colorado, if that's our intention. But at the very least, to amend this amendment to restore the crossed out facilities that are in other words, to include in the list of public facilities, banks, healthcare facilities, reception areas, restaurants, retail food products, business establishments, retail stores, and theaters.
Senator Terlahi, Senator Terlahi, based on that previous statement, so do you have an objection to this portion of the amendment? Do you have anything in writing? If not, we'll go. Please clarify.
I'm making a motion to amend the amendment, an amendment to the amendment, to include the portions that are struck out here, to also include those.
We're going to take a moment recess. This legislature's back from recess. Senator Marsh, you're recognized.
Si Juice Masi, Madam Speaker. I will withdraw this amendment, and I make a motion to reconsider the first.
Now let's move to withdraw the amendment that we are working on right now. Can you move to withdraw?
Yes, so I move to withdraw the amendment that we've been discussing right now.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Senator Marsh, you still have the floor.
Saina Maasi, Madam Speaker. And so I have a motion to reconsider the amendment previously, the one on page 10, line 6, about public consumption banned. Section 8105.
On that motion to reconsider, are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Senator Marsh, please state. We are back.
Okay. And so I would like to vote, if that's the proper procedure, to withdraw that as well and to leave it as it is unlawful to consume cannabis openly and in public.
Do you want to restore the language?
Yes, to restore the language.
On that motion, does everybody understand? On the motion, any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Senator, I'm sorry, Senator Tadu, do you have a point of information?
No, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to make amendment to this amendment.
Okay. You are recognized on that amendment as...
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yes. Hold on. We are on the main amendment.
Forgive me, Madam Speaker. I believe, just a point of order, I believe
Madam Speaker, I withdraw that request. Thank you.
Okay. Just to clarify, Madam Speaker, can you tell us where we're at now? Because I think things moved a little bit quickly. So bring us back to speed, please.
Senator Taitano, you are recognized on your next amendment.
Sujuis Masi, Madam Speaker. So to get us all back on the same page, as it were, we have restored the language to section 810, sorry, let me make sure that I have it, 5, the public consumption banned penalty. And we have restored the language, it is unlawful to consume cannabis openly and in public.
On that motion. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So,
huh?
Senator Marsh Taitano, that motion was passed. You are now going to your new motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. With the previous speaker, I thought she was asking me to reiterate that. Okay. So,
please read your new amendment. You have another amendment?
Yes. This is to add a new section to Chapter 2 on page 19 to read Section 81108, Unlawful Dissemination of Cannabis Odor. No person or business shall permit or cause the smell, smoke, or noxious odor from cannabis cultivation or consumption to emanate from its point of generation onto another real property that is not in its possession. Violations in this section shall be deemed a nuisance in accordance with Part 3 of Title 20, Guam Code Annotated. Violations of this section and the resulting penalties herein are in addition to other violations and penalties of the law. And
on that motion, on that amendment, are there anyone wishing to speak?
Point of information, Madam Speaker, it is add a new subsection to 8118, not 811008.
No,
Subsection
uh,
8118.
To add a new section 8118 after
That's right.
8117. Yes, it is. On that amendment, anyone wishing to speak? If not, any objections? Senator San Augustine, I will recognize you on that amendment.
Madam Speaker, if I read this correctly, no persons or business, okay, the smell, smoke, or noxious odor, por favor. When you burn your trash outside, what are we going to do now? We're going to come up with fines now if you smell the smoke next door? We got to be realistic. I understand where the author of the amendment is asking, but I just want us to be very realistic. If you think you smell marijuana, you're going to say there's a violation of the law? Only if you think? Who's gonna come up with a detector to determine that it's marijuana next door? Or it's marijuana coming out of wherever? I just want us to be very careful as we introduce amendments. We make sense of it. I mean, already one colleague already was joking on the site, como mandó do it, pues pago poner este. You know, I'm just trying to be realistic, ma'am. I don't want to make a joke of that, but thank you, ma'am.
Senator Titagui, you're recognized on the amendment.
Madam Speaker, I object to the amendment and call for the vote.
There has been an objection. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Can I just take 1 minute to see exactly what Title 20 is and what those violations are? We're making a judgment call without even understanding what the penalties are. If we can just take 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
We'll take a moment recess. Legislature's back from recess. Committee on Rules, Chair Senator Regine, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to call for the vote.
On that vote, there was an objection. All those in favor? For the amendment, signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Taitsino, do you have any more amendments?
Sidus Masi. This one is to amend the bill.
What page are we on, please?
I believe it's page 23, line 25.
Please proceed.
Section 9110, licensing prohibition for establishments near schools. The board shall not issue a license for a cannabis establishment located within a distance of 500 feet from any public or private school and other places or facilities where youth generally congregate, which include child care centers, public playgrounds, and parks and festivals. The measurement shall be taken in a straight line from the center of the nearest entrance to the building of such school or place or facility stated herein to the center of the nearest entrance of the cannabis establishment for which a license is applied. The provisions of this section shall not prohibit the renewal of any valid license previously issued and in effect at the time of a subsequent construction or establishment of a school or place or facility stated herein within 500 feet of such licensed cannabis establishment, and provided that the premises of such licensed cannabis establishment shall not subsequently be added to or enlarged.
On that amendment, Senator Shelton and then Senator Tadagui.
Madam
Thank
Speaker,
you, Speaker.
Yes.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Can we just get a copy of the amendment? Some of us don't have it here. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We're going to go ahead and ask the Sergeant of Arms to please get copies to all of them. And I'll go ahead and have Senator Shelton. We'll go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment. I thank the previous speaker for this amendment. I think it's very important to establish these guidelines of where we can put these cannabis establishments, and I think it's very important that we have a distance between any school, and I'd like to propose to change from the distance of 500 feet to 1,000 feet.
There's an amendment to the main amendment. Are there anyone wishing to speak? Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm just concerned is that the author of the amendment, not the amendment to the amendment, but the original author, is this restriction of a cannabis establishment, is this consistent with the ABC restrictions that is not be within so many feet from a school and child care and everything? Because there is a law that deals with alcohol beverage. And if it's consistent, then we should stay consistent with that. But I'm not too sure. I'm trying to find it right now. Maybe if
I'm going to ask Senator Raj.
Or maybe we can recess and legal can tell us if you like, Madam Speaker.
We will take that moment, recess again to ask legal
It should be a
counsel.
couple minutes only.
The legislature is back from recess on the amendment to the amendment by Senator Shelton. Are there any objections? Anyone wishing to speak on that? Are there any objections to Senator Shelton's amendment from 500 feet to 1,000 feet? Senator San Augustine, you did have the floor.
Yes, Madam Speaker. No, I do object to the 1,000 feet, and the only reason why I asked the question is the original amendment is consistent with the ABC, alcohol beverage, and it is the Guam Code annotated Title 11, Chapter 3. It's 500 feet from a school, church, and so forth. So it'll be consistent with the ABC. And 1,000 feet is a lot of feet. You end up not having any buildings.
There has been an objection. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, I agree with the amendment to 1,000 feet because that's consistent with the drug-free school zones. And I believe that we are dealing with, in the case of cannabis, a drug.
There has been anyone else on the amendment? Anyone else on the amendment?
1,000.
If not, there has been an objection to that.
Point of information, Madam Speaker. Could we please get clarification? One person said the ABC is 500 feet, one is saying 1,000. If we could just get that confirmed?
Yes, he's
The
reading off,
alcohol.
Senator Terlahi, Senator San Augustine was reading off the Title 11 GCA. Can you reread that, Senator San Augustine?
Madam
The
Speaker.
drug-free, is that consistent with the drug-free school zone?
No, there's two different.
Oh, that's
two different
1,000?
But if it's inconsistent with drug-free, then I will support the 1,000 feet. But if we're going to be consistent with the other licensing that we're issuing out there, which is alcohol, then we should be consistent with them.
So the objection is, there's still an objection. Senator Taitigui, then Senator Rangel.
Madam Speaker, I agree if there's already law stating drug-free zone that's already in the books right now, then I think wouldn't that law stay in place, even if we were to have this other law as far as like establishments being put through. So I asked legal, if we were to change it to 500, would the current law that says drug-free zone being at 1,000 still be in play?
We will take a moment's recess. Legislature's back from recess. Senator San Augustine.
Madam Speaker, when I was speaking in reference to the drug-free zone, I think my colleagues need to understand the intent of the drug-free zone, and I'm going to read what was in the law and the intent of the legislature time. The intent of the drug-free zone was to ensure that there was harsher penalties, including longer prison terms for persons who possess, use, deliver, sell, or transport illegal drugs in or around Guam schools. It had nothing to do with, if this bill passes, recreational marijuana is not illegal. It becomes legal. So if we're consistent with the ABC, the alcohol beverage, 500 feet would be okay. If you add 1,000, I'm going to object to the 1,000. I'll stick with the 500 feet. And if we want to apply the drug-free zone, por favor, read the law. Don't assume that that's what it meant, because I just read it. It was the intent for the possession of illegal drugs. This law will become legal drugs.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Senator Tellel, do you wish to speak on the amendment from Senator Shelton for the 1,000 feet? If not, Senator Shelton, would you wish to close? On the vote, there was an objection. All those in favor for Senator Shelton's amendment, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Motion carries. On the main amendment, Senator Tello, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to also make an amendment, and it's on 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth line, where it says playgrounds and parks and festivals. I'd like to strike out festivals.
On that amendment, are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Senator Titino, do you have any more amendments? If not, on the main amendment, I do apologize. On the main amendment, I'm sorry, Senator Titino, we're still on that amendment. On the main amendment, as amended, are there any objections? Motion carries. Senator Titino, you are recognized on your last amendment. And if anyone wants to speak on the main motion, please let me know. Senator Titino, you are recognized.
Siduous Masi. So for my final amendment, I have...
what page, Senator Titino?
If this is on the marked version, I apologize if it's not. Page 28. So hopefully that is for the marked up version. On page 28, if this is referencing the marked up version, line 15, to amend the bill to read, any person under 21 years of age possessing less than 1 ounce or less of cannabis, 8 grams or less of cannabis concentrate, or any cannabis-infused products containing 800 milligrams or less of tetrahydrocannabinol shall be guilty of a violation and subject to a $100 fine for the first offense and a $250 fine for each subsequent possession. The violation of the section and the resulting penalties prescribed herein are in addition to other violations and penalties of public law related to cannabis possession.
On that amendment, anyone wishing to speak on that amendment? Senator Pito, and then Senator Tadagui, then Senator Regine.
Madam Speaker, I must say that I support that amendment based on the Uniform Code of Drug Abuse. that anything below an ounce is a violation. It's consistent with the drug law that we have.
Thank you, Senator Pito Terlai. Senator Tidewee, you're recognized on the amendment. And I'm just going to note, it is line 26 on page 28. Senator Tidewee, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm probably the last one who wants to take another break, but you know this does deal with some type of a certain milligrams of THC. So if you just give us 2 minutes on this one, I promise I won't ask for another one. So I just need a short recess. 2 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Best.
We
Okay,
will
thank you.
recess. Legislature's back in session. Senator Taitigui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my questions were answered. I have no objections to this amendment at all. I do realize that the author of the amendment is going to just make a couple amendments there, but thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Torres on the amendment? Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, all those in, would you like to? Senator Terlayi, did you raise your hand to speak on the amendment before she closes? Senator Terlayi, I will recognize you before the author of the amendment. Did you wish to speak?
Madam Speaker, before I continue, I would just like to ask to confirm where we are, because line 15 on page 28.
I did share with you that there was a correction. It's page 28, line 26.
All right. Okay, so if it's line 26, then right now, line 26 says that if you possess an ounce, you will be guilty of a violation. But this amendment is saying if you possess less than an ounce, you're guilty of a violation. No, I'm sorry. The current language says if you possess cannabis at all, contrary to the statute, because you're under 21 years old, that you would be guilty of a violation. But this amendment is saying only if you possess less than an ounce, you would be guilty of a violation, but it seems to leave unanswered what happens if you possess more or, yeah.
Do you have an objection to the bill, Senator Terlahi? I mean, to the amendment?
I think it needs to be clarified. I think we're, I don't think it makes sense as it is. To amend current, what the bill says would be a violation if you possess it under 21 years of age, but this one is making it more lax, and it's only if you possess less than an ounce, then it's a violation.
Senator Terlayi, if you have an amendment to write on this amendment as we speak, I'll go ahead and have you work with the author. I will address Senator Mary Torres. You are recognized on the amendment.
Madam Speaker, I don't believe an objection has been proffered, and if not, then I do object to this amendment, and I object on the premise that the way that it's written previously under section 70.44.4, it provides that possession of cannabis by persons under 21 years of age is unlawful. It shall be guilty of a violation and subject to a fine. That's very clear. Anyone under 21 years of age is not permitted to possess or use cannabis. The way that this amendment is it ties it into the adult use cannabis in section 8103, which is good on its own, but I object to changing the way that it's written on page 28, line 25, regarding persons under 21 years of age, because the way that it's written now, it just says absolutely not. It gives no conditions, no amounts that are things. So I object to this amendment. I think the way that it's written is very clear. Anyone 21 years of age should not be in possession of cannabis, period.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Anyone else on the amendment? You can't withdraw unless you're going to withdraw. There is an objection on the floor. I need to make her close. Senator Kelly, you may close on the amendment. You want to close on the amendment?
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. My intention with this, and I see that we have not written it correctly, my intention with this is the way that it currently stands is it says any person on page 28, lines 25 and forward, it says any person under 21 years of age possessing cannabis shall be guilty of a violation and subject to $100 fine. My concern there was that there were no tiers, that if somebody has 1 ounce or less, it's a $100 fine. If an adult asked somebody under the age of 21 to carry 5 pounds of it, the adult could potentially be able to avoid getting the higher penalty for the adult and leave it up to the younger person to just get the $100 fine. So I was trying to close that loophole, but we did not write it correctly. So I will withdraw this because another senator has proposed a more correct language.
On that motion to withdraw without any objections, motion carries. We had Senator Moylan next on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. They're just making the copies of the 2 amendments. Just a few moments, please.
I do apologize. Are there anyone else on the main motion? Sergeant of Arms, do you have copies distributed? They're making copies? You can. We'll take a second recess. This legislature's back from recess. Senator Moylan, you are recognized on the main motion.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to introduce two amendments, one at a time. And the reason for this amendment is that after reviewing the fiscal note from BBMR and the revenue and taxation projections on the potential tax revenue that legalizes cannabis may bring for our island, I do think it's important that we review the section on the excise taxes being imposed by this bill, 3235. Because the legislation will allow our island residents to cultivate at home, we may be limiting our economic opportunities that other states enjoy today. At the same time, at this time, we do need to equip our police department and our customs agencies with additional manpower and resources to effectively enforce this new act. And most recently, we are also discussing about monies for such things as substance abuse treatment and prevention and education, and that's why I've adjusted this amendment to the bill. Madam Speaker, we keep hearing comments such as this industry will solve many of our island's financial problems, or that we should legalize cannabis and just tax the heck out of it. Unfortunately, the current projections identified in this industry may provide additional revenue representing less than 1% of what the government anticipates in spending the next fiscal year. But, let's hope that we are wrong and under-projecting the true fiscal opportunities. But nonetheless, if we're going to generate some new revenue, then let's increase the regressive taxes applied to cannabis. Just reading Attorney General Levin Camacho's position, we can anticipate an increase in possibly burglaries, and we also have to look at some potential of cannabis black market, and thus the importance of more support for our law enforcement and also for social issues I would like to address. And it's with that I would like to make these two amendments to Bill 3235. And I'll take it one at a time. And the first amendment, I believe everyone, my colleagues would have a copy of. It regards line 11 of page 18 that was just handed out. So it's line 11 of page 18. And I'll read that briefly here. So it's subsection 8113, excise tax on cannabis, item A. So this original section stays as is, which I'll read for us, is Guam excise tax is imposed on the sale or transfer of cannabis from a cannabis cultivation facility to a retail cannabis store or a cannabis manufacturing facility. Every cannabis cultivation facility shall pay a Guam excise tax at 15% on the dollar value of cannabis that is sold or transferred from cannabis cultivation facility to a retail cannabis store or a cannabis product manufacturing facility. Provided further, no such excise tax shall be levied upon cannabis intended for the sale of medicinal cannabis. The amendment now comes as follows, and it's the last sentence added to this section. A special cannabis assessment fee in the amount of 10% shall be imposed on the dollar value of the cannabis that is sold at a retail cannabis store. This fee shall be on top of any other taxes imposed to the retailer. So the excise fee, Madam Speaker, being imposed in the legislation would apply to cultivation facilities who sold or transferred the cannabis to a retailer. We are imposing this 10% fee to the retailer, which will be on top of the business privilege tax. They would already be imposed. When you look at other states that have legalized cannabis, the excise tax of 50% is imposed on cultivators and the sales tax is applied at the point of sale. Because we currently don't have a sales tax, this fee would be inclusive in the costing of the product. Now, while there may be concerns that this would further increase the cost of the product, we need to create a balance to assure that we are attaining adequate revenue from the industry. If nearly $5 million is what is being projected from Department of Revenue and Tax, then this increase could generate an additional $3 million to the revenues. The Department of Revenue and Tax is projecting a $30 million industry. So those are my comments, Madam Speaker, for the first amendment.
Thank you, Senator Moylan.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On that amendment, Senator Reggio, you're recognized.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I believe the wording on this amendment is inaccurate. What he's talking about here sounds like a sales tax. He's calling it a cannabis assessment fee in the amount of 10% that will be imposed on the dollar value of cannabis that is sold. That's a sales tax, not a fee. Yes, I'd like to pose that question to the author of the amendment. Are you trying to impose a sales tax or a fee?
Thank you, Senator. Would you like to yield, Senator Moylan?
Since we don't have the sales tax, so I use the term as a fee, which I'm sure we have other fees imposed for different lines.
Senator Reggio, does that answer your inquiry? Can you restate your answer, Senator Moylan?
Yes, Madam Speaker. So we don't have a sales tax for Guam, right? So it is in the terms of a fee. I'm not imposing a sales tax, but a fee, and I believe we've done fees for other items on our island as well. So it's a fee. Yes, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Does that answer your inquiry, Senator Reggio?
Yes, ma'am. In that case, I object to the amendment.
There is an objection. Anyone else on the amendment? If not, Senator Chalayi on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of this amendment. I think it's a good amendment, and it does more accurately convey what the promises of cannabis have been, that it's going to bring in for us, I'm hoping, a lot more than $5 million if we are going to go through this entire exercise to legalize it. And the only way that it's going to do that is, I mean, this is one of the ways, and this is what has been done in other jurisdictions, where in addition to the excise tax that is provided in this bill of 15% that on cannabis that is sold at a cultivation facility, that there is also an additional tax on the retail facility. So I stand in support of this for the reasons stated by the author.
Thank you, Senator Chalayi. Anyone else on the amendment? If not, there has been an objection. All those who support the amendment by Senator Jim Moylan signify by raising your hand. Motion carries. Senator Moylan, you're still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move on to my second amendment. And the second amendment, it regards, which was handed out, it's reference to line 18 of page 18. Okay. So the second amendment is to add a D to section 8113 of page 18, line 18. And this would allocate assessment fees for both Guam Police Department and the Customs and Quarantine Agency, in addition to some of the assessment fees which will be used for substance abuse treatment, prevention, and education. So if I'd like to read the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Please do.
Okay. So there established a fund to be known as the Cannabis Fee Fund, which shall be maintained separate and apart from any other fund of the Government of Guam, and shall be administered by the Department of Administration. A special cannabis assessment fees collected or received from a retail cannabis store shall be deposited in a cannabis fee fund and shall be annually allocated and is hereby appropriated and shall be continued to be deemed appropriated as follows. 30% of the fund shall be transferred to the Guam Police Department for the purpose of recruiting or maintaining police officers. 30% of the fund shall be transferred to the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency for the purpose of recruiting or maintaining customs and quarantine officers. And 40% of the fund shall be used for substance abuse treatment, prevention, and education. So the additional revenue provided to these agencies would allow both to increase and retain their manpower, as well as more law enforcement officers if we are to legalize the cannabis industry on Guam, to include education on cannabis too. So this allows the current projection of $5 million to go towards other needs of our government. We need to lockbox these revenues, and if revenues do increase in the future, it will continue to provide our public safety entities the revenue they desperately need. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sijus Masi, Senator Moylan. On the amendment, Senator Pito, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Jim. I support the amendment. However, I want to make a point on the amendment, not only for the recruitment and maintenance or maintaining the police officers and custom officers, but also to make an addendum to that, to include resources that is needed for this law enforcement, like, you know, sniffing dogs and things like that. So I just wanted to include the word resources that they need to do their enforcement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I will acknowledge Senator San Augustine before I rule on Senator Terlahi. Yes, I understand. Did you? I wanted to see if he had a point of information based on his statement.
Madam Speaker.
Do you have a point of information?
Yeah, well, I'm point of concern. The author of the amendment talk about money.
If you can state it in an inquiry form, Senator, and I'll yield to.
Well, as you asked, Madam, for the inquiry form, I haven't seen the written amendment from the previous speaker. And I'm just concerned that we talk about all this percentage we're going to give to everybody. What's the dollar amount? 10% of excess tax is only 10%. What does that amount to? Are we saying in the millions? Because if we're going to try to convince ourselves that we're going to give to GPD and customs in the hundreds and millions of dollars, it's not going to happen. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I'm going to just take a moment recess just to clarify the amendment. The legislature's back from recess. I'm going to, Senator Pito, on your amendment.
Thank
To
you,
the
Madam
amendment.
Speaker. Going back on the amendment,
To the amendment, yes.
on line 18, page 18, going down to almost to the middle part of the amendment where it says 30% of the funds should be transferred to the Guam Police Department for the purpose of recruiting or maintaining the funds or maintaining police officers and the purchase of equipments and detection devices. 30% of the funds shall be transferred to the Guam Custom and Quarantine Agency for the purpose of recruiting and maintaining custom and quarantine officers and the purpose and to purchase and the purchase of equipments and detection devices.
On that amendment to the amendment, are there any objections? No objections, motion carries. On Senator Moylan's amendment, Sabina? On Senator Jim Moylan's amendment, as amended.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. So I remember in the public hearing there was some talk that there may be, we need to beef up Department of Revenue and Taxation in order to basically address the tax issues and possibly having a whole new marijuana department within the Department of Revenue and Taxation. I think if we're going in this direction, we need to also set aside money for that department as well. So I would like to make that amendment.
State your amendment, please.
So I would like to include in the allocation of the cannabis assessment fees to include a portion of those funds towards Department of Revenue and Taxation for compliance. I may need to take a recess to figure out exactly how much.
Just tell me. Just a moment recess to write out the amendment. Come on. The legislature's back from recess. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to withdraw my amendment to the amendment. I'm going to have Senator Moylan introduce a different amendment on my behalf. It's still not prepped yet. Still waiting on it.
So on the motion to withdraw, no objection, motion carries. We are still on Senator Jim Moylan's amendment. Anyone else wishing to speak? If Senator Talai on Senator Jim's amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this amendment is taking the money that was additionally, the fee that was additionally imposed at retail sales, that would be 10% of the sale, and taking that money and now dividing it between GPD, customs, and 40% it says goes to substance abuse treatment, prevention, and education. And I agree with this part, especially that goes 40% to the substance abuse treatment, prevention, and education, because in my review of other jurisdictions to see how did they implement this and protect their residents at the same time, there's a huge burden that I think is going to be placed on behavioral health. And as we saw earlier today, there was an amendment to put some money towards behavioral health from another cannabis fund, but that would only amount to about $40,000. So I thank the author for the 40% that's going to be going towards those programs. I also think that the 30% to GPD and to customs, because marijuana is legal now, it's, customs is not going to be really using this money in regards to marijuana. But where I really think the money needs to be put in advance, especially of the legalization of marijuana, is to public health. Public health has a huge burden. They're going to be the ones we're looking to assess what is the impact of this, and especially revenue taxation. But the author that withdrew the last amendment says she's going to take care of the Department of Revenue and Taxation. Because the way it looks to me from the other jurisdictions as to where the burden lies when they legalize marijuana is it lies in inspection, revenue and taxation, and the environmental health divisions at public health are going to have to go out and they're going to have to inspect, make sure that all the cannabis licensed facilities are in compliance, and that there is no public health at risk from contamination, pesticides, all those different things. And so that's why I think the bigger burden will be over there. And of course, in these jurisdictions, there is some, activity by the police to ensure that. I mean, it showed that when cannabis, marijuana was first legalized in Colorado, that there were very few arrests, but that since then there's actually been quite a few arrests for consuming in public places. And so, of course, we will need these, services of the police, but I don't think it's going to be as drastic as the need that we really are going to have at the Department of Public Health, because one of the big recommendations that was made by Colorado Public Health, the doctors there that studied this, and they made these recommendations for other jurisdictions who would be implementing or legalizing marijuana in other jurisdictions, and their express recommendation is that prior to the legalization, we do an assessment of what the actual use is in our community so that we can then compare. Because everyone agrees this is a nationwide experiment as to what the effects really are, because of the federal law, most jurisdictions are limited in the research that they are able to do. And so they really recommend that baseline assessment that we can do, or that public health can do for us, or behavioral health can do for us, is really going to help us as we go along to prove that what we are saying, that whether there are no effects on, the youth especially. And I think that's really one of the biggest concerns of our community is really, are the promises of no effects to the youth or at the decreases in violent crimes, are this really going to pan out? And so they recommend doing that baseline assessment. And so for that purpose, Madam Speaker, with all due respect to the author, I would ask that the portion of the going to the Customs and the Police Department both be reduced in half, and that 30% goes to the Department of Public Health. Because I really believe the burden of a lot of this is going to be on them. And of course, the Department of Revenue and Taxation.
So, Senator Terlai, so that we be clear, Department of Public Health would have 30%. Department of Revenue and Taxation will have what?
No, I'm not making that amendment here because the prior mover said she's taking care of it in another section.
Okay,
so so it would then read 15% be transferred to the Guam Police Department, 15% transferred to the Guam Customs, 30% be transferred to the Department of Public Health and Social Services, and the 40%, as is stated here, for the substance abuse treatment, prevention, and education.
Does everybody get that? On that amendment?
Just one more thing, if I may add, so the Department of Revenue and Taxation suggested at the hearing that the Department of Public Health be added to this control board, and I agree with that recommendation. It's not in the bill yet, but that recommendation, because that's how it is done in the other jurisdictions. It's those entities that are really, in making the regulations, they are also making it safe. And so I just think that we should put the money where the burden is really going to be lying. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the percentages, Senator Therese, just so that I'm correct, again, the breakdown is 15% to GPD, 15% to Customs, 30% to substance abuse, and then for public health,
30% to DPHSS, and,
right.
then the final one, 40% as is. It says to substance abuse treatment. We're guessing that that's going to be Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness, but.
Thank you. On that motion, Senator San Agustin, you're recognized on Senator Teresa's amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to make an amendment to the...
Let's dispose of her amendment to the amendment because we're still on...
No, it's on her amendment. I wanted to reduce the percentage of the 30 to public health. She asked for 15 to GPD, 15 to Customs, 30% to public health, and then she mentioned revenue and tax, but then she gives 40% still to public health, which is behavioral, and nothing to revenue and tax. They're the one that's going to be standing up the board. They're the one that's going to be doing the compliance. How did you figure that's going to work? So that's why I wanted to make the amendment that the 30% to public health should be reduced to 20 and give 10% to revenue and tax. So they can stand up the board, they can stand up the compliance office branch.
On that amendment, to the amendment, I'll go ahead and entertain that. Is there any objection? No objection, motion carries. On Senator Terlahi's amendment, as amended, are there any objections? Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I feel it's a little bit unclear on these amendments that we just, the previous speaker's amendment, and then the originator of the amendment. So I'm thinking, can you just
Vice Speaker, I will share the amendments, the breakdown on that.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I'm going to take a moment recess so that I can just make sure that the adjustments are clarified, and I'll get that in writing. Senator, we are back from recess. So Senator Nelson, Vice Speaker Nelson, it was 15% to GPD, 15% to Customs, 20% to Department of Public Health and Social Services, 40% to the Substance Abuse, and 10% to Revenue and Taxation. Thank you. Senator Therese Terlahi on the amendment. To the amendment. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, on the amendment to the amendment as proffered by Senator Terlahi? Without any objections, motion carries. We are still on Senator Jim Moylan's amendment as amended. Senator Vice Speaker Nelson, you are recognized on the main amendment by Senator Moylan as amended.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to be just a little bit clear, because in the second to the last line, it says, and 40% of the fund shall be used for substance abuse treatment, prevention, and education. I would like to amend this section here, where it shall read, and 40% of the funds shall be transferred to behavioral health and wellness for substance abuse treatment, prevention, and education.
On that amendment, are there any objections? Senator Regine, Senator San Augustine, you're recognized on that.
I'd recommend, Madam Chair, Madam Speakers, that the verbiage should be appropriate. You can't transfer something, we don't even know what the amount is, but we can appropriate it. So just change the word to appropriate.
Senator San Augustine, can you read just for the clarification?
Madam Speaker, it says it shall be appropriated for substance abuse treatment. It just changed the shall be used to shall be appropriated. So as soon as the money is identified, it's just moved automatically. Require no legislative action.
On that amendment to the amendment, no objection. Motion carries. On Vice Speaker's amendment, no objection. Motion carries. We're still on Senator Moylan's main amendment. Are there anyone wishing to speak? If not, Senator Moylan, would you like to close on this?
No closing statements, Madam Speaker.
On Senator Jim Moylan's amendment as amended, one moment recess. The legislature's back in recess. Vice Speaker Nelson to recess till tomorrow at 9:30. Please.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make the motion to recess tomorrow till 9:30 in the morning. Thank you.
On that motion, without an objection, we are recessed till 9:30 tomorrow morning. Good night.